If you thought that we were going to be going back to like the main classes already for the low star legend series, you'd be wrong because there are actually, believe it or not, a few low rarity extra class servants in the game, and I thought I'd go ahead and talk about Zhu because I've been having a lot of fun using her over on the JP version of the game. She's essentially like the arts version of Chen Gong, a free-to-play support type servant. Although unlike Chen Gong, she does not have a damaging NP, and actually leans a lot more into that support aspect, and if I do say so myself, actually does a very, very good job at doing that. And so I was like, you know what a better servant to go ahead and talk about. I've been having a lot of fun playing around with her. It gets NA players excited for the servant coming out, and if you're on JP, it's more incentive to go ahead and level her up. I mean, the lotto is on right now, so you'll have enough QP to level her up, get her skills up, and also you have the EXP cards to go ahead and, actually level her up as well. Before we actually begin, make sure you leave a like on the video and you subscribe to the channel for daily FGO content. I'm also back to streaming regularly during the weekdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so make sure you come out to that, and I will catch you guys during those streams. But for now, let's go ahead and start talking about Zhu, starting off with her hits. And can I just say, it's really nice to talk about a more modern, low rarity servant, because I'm used to talking about like all these year one servants that just have abysmal hits, and you're just praying that their skills are able to carry them to the finish line because their hits are just fundamentally really bad. Zhu hits are actually really strong with 3 on her arts cards and 4 on her quick cards, and a decent 0.59% NP gain and decent 9.8% star gen, although the star gen's not as important because when we get to Zhu's NP, she'll be genning enough stars as is on that, especially if you can get a couple of stacks going. The NP gain, if you think that's a little bit low, consider the fact that Zhu's basically going to turn everybody's cards into guaranteed crits with how many stars she's going to be producing, and also the fact that she's able to buff the party's arts and NP gain as well. So while it might seem a little bit low, when you actually start getting into some of her skills, it's going to be more than enough for her to continually fire her NP. She does have some unique passives. For instance, you don't really want to bring her against Consort Yu because she won't really do any damage against her, but then again, Zhu is supposed to be a support type servant, so I don't know why you'd be using her against Consort Yu in the first place as like a DPS. You don't really care how much damage she's doing. She interestingly also carries like one of the Avenger style passive skills, and that every time she takes damage, she actually gets a bit more NP back from that, which is actually really good because Zhu is actually kind of hard to take down because she's kind of like refunding so much HP, especially if you're pairing her with someone like Lady Avalon that can raise her max HP even higher. It kind of makes it to the point where like you just have to one-shot Zhu because she's always pretty much going to be at max HP. And so the fact that she can kind of take advantage of her, natural durability, I guess if you want to call it, and get more NP back is really nice. But enough messing around, let's go ahead and start talking about some of the skills. And the first skill here is already a very strong open to the servant. She's going to be giving the entire party a 2k heal, while also removing the latest debuff from the entire party. But that's also not it, she's also giving the entire party 30% NP gain for 3 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. This is really broken because it basically means you'll almost always have the party's NP generation buff up at pretty much all times because, it's up for 3 turns and the cooldown is 5 turns, so there's really only going to be a 2-turn window unless you want to like save the heal or the debuff cleanse because you know that like the enemy's about to hit you with something crazy. Still, just in general, this gives a lot of utility to the party, offering a heal, being able to, save one of your other party members if they get stunned or charmed, or maybe your DPS got hit by a really fat attack down buff. You can really help them out with that. The only issue is that it's going to be the rightmost buff. You can't like choose what debuff you want to remove. So if you're like fighting, I don't know, someone like the Ereshkigal Ghost from the Christmas event that hits you with like 9 debuffs at once, that can be a little bit annoying, but for the most part, this should come in pretty handy. It should at least be nice that it's kind of tacked on there. However, the second skill is where things start to get a little bit nutty, because she's going to be applying a whole smorgasbord of different buffs to the entire party, all of which are up for 3 turns and only on a 6-turn cooldown, so it's got some really nice uptime. She's giving everybody a 20% arts buff, a 30% crit damage buff, a 30% special damage mod against undead enemies, and then she's also reducing all enemies' critical attack chance by 20% for 3 turns. Remember how I said you kind of have to one-shot Zhu to kill her? Well, this is going to make that a little bit harder because it's going to reduce the chance that a random crit comes her way and just blows her up. And not even just her, but the entire party as well. So that's already kind of nice. I shouldn't have to explain why the arts buff is really good, because that's offering more damage for your art servants, but also buffing up their NP gain, which again, she's already also doing on the first skill. Not to also mention, again, when we get to the NP, she's basically going to make sure that everybody is doing crits, which is even more insane for their NP gain. Speaking of crits, she can make them capitalize on that with a 30% crit damage buff, and if that all wasn't enough, the undead special damage mod is actually kinda strong because a lot of these enemies are actually fairly common. You can find them in like advanced quests as like the main enemies, you can find them in just random boss nodes as like the goons, or even if you want to use Jufu as kind of like a replacement for your Castoria, because again, she does give them an arts buff and she does give them an NP gain buff, and spoiler alert, also has a targetable battery. These are also common enemies you'll find in farming nodes as well. And so it's really good if you're going to be taking her to advanced quests for farming, or even just for like fighting a boss that has these random undead goons. It's pretty strong because different buff types in FGO actually multiply into each other, so that arts buff is going to multiply into that undead special damage mod if you're fighting any of those enemies, offering your DPS even more damage. And hey, if you happen to come across any, cavalry class servants, well, Jufu being an alter ego might also get to do a nasty crit here and there, maybe she gets a little bit lucky. I wouldn't advise using her as the DPS. I think she fits a lot better as like your support that might just happen to be able to do a little bit of damage because everybody's doing some crits. But still, it is kind of nice. And let's cap it off with the third skill over here. This is a targetable 30% battery that also gives that target 100% buff removal resistance for 1 turn. There's a little bit of a niche. If you use her with Consort U, it basically becomes a 50% battery while also giving her 30% NP damage. But the unfortunate thing is that we have 2 Consort U's in the game. One is a Buster Servant and one is a Quick Servant, so she doesn't really synergize with her very well. But I don't know, maybe we'll get like a Christmas Consort U that happens to be an art servant or something along those lines where you can actually use them completely in tandem with one another, and that might actually be kind of funny. But for the rest of the servants that you're going to be using, this is actually just going to be enough. A targetable 30% battery is just generically very good, and you can actually time the buff removal resistance for when you know that you're going to break an enemy's break bar, and a lot of enemies right now, when you break their bars, will like try to remove some of your buffs. And so if you kind of know that that's going to be coming, you can time this appropriately and either put this on one of your supports because you don't want them to lose all of the buffs that they might be stacking up. For instance, Jufu's own NP stacks crit stars on her NP, right? Maybe you don't want to lose that, maybe you give that to Jufu, or you don't want your DPS to lose all of their offensive buffs, and you smack this on them so they can kind of still stay in the game after they break that break bar. Speaking of her NP, it's like got very simple effects, but it's just really nutty. First and foremost, it's a 5k heal as long as you have her at NP5, which realistically, everyone's going to get her at NP5 eventually, dude. She's a 3-star, so it's like not going to be that hard. Although I say that as someone that is like still struggling to get Mori and get Izo, but the difference is that Jufu's at least not limited like they are, so she's a little bit easier to get. She's then recovering 1 to 2,000 HP every single turn for 5 turns. That's pretty nice for helping her stay in the game, keeping her HP topped off and everything. But then, for whatever reason, I have no clue why they thought this was okay, she just drops 20 stars every single turn for 5 turns. Which is why I was kind of saying earlier that, yeah, you could just fire her NP like every other turn if you wanted to. You don't need to focus on like firing it every single turn, because the stars last for such a long time for literally no reason. It kind of means that as soon as you got like 2 NP stacks going, you're just going to have like 40 stars floating around. And as long as you just keep firing her NP like every other turn, you just have permanent 40 stars floating around, plus whatever stars you generate with your normal Brave Chains, or God forbid somebody has a max limit broken 2030 that gives you another 10 stars every single turn. And then after 2 Jufu NPs, you just guarantee have 50 stars. Not that you really need the 2030, because again, surely you'll gen at least 10 stars in a Brave Chain. But yeah, this is kind of what is just like the nutty icing on the cake for Jufu, and kind of why I wanted to make this video and why she's so fun to make. Because all of her skills are just really, really good. You can use her as like a Castoria replacement for farming. You can just use her as like a just solid support type servant for any challenge quest or advanced quest that you might be going into. But But then it's just the NP that's just like that icing on the cake where she's like, oh yeah, and by the way, basically everyone's doing crits all the time, guaranteed. Which is why, if you haven't already, you need to level up this servant right now. And if you're on the NA version of the game, you need to be looking forward to this servant because she is just absolutely amazing. Like, I have really no qualms with this servant. I mean, what, she doesn't have like hardline survivability, like an invincibility or a dodge, but that's what your Castoria or your Lady Avalon are going to be for, right? Lady Avalon can protect the entire party with her invincibility skill. Castoria has a targeted invincibility and she has solemn defense. So I think you'll be covered as long as you can bring a friend Lady Avalon or a friend Castoria, because you'll have your own Jufu ready to go. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Am I gassing Jufu up a little bit too much, or did I not gas her up enough? Let me know all that in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace, late guys.